The room smelled of old mahogany and polished leather. It was the kind of place where life-changing news was delivered with cold professionalism. I sat in the front row, my hands clasped tightly together, nails digging into my palms. The weight of grief sat heavy on my chest, but another emotion churned beneath it: dread. My husband, Ethan, had passed away unexpectedly just 2 weeks ago. A heart attack, the doctors had said. He was only 38. It didn't make sense. Nothing did. Our life together wasn't perfect, but it was ours, until it wasn't. Ethan's mother, Sylvia, sat across the room, dressed in black silk that looked more runway-ready than funeral-appropriate. Her lips curled into a smug smile as she tapped her manicured nails against the chair's armrest. She hadn't shed a single tear since the funeral. Instead, she hovered like a vulture, watching me with thinly veiled contempt. The lawyer, Mr. Reynolds, cleared his throat. We'll now proceed with the reading of Ethan Whitmore's last will and testament. I braced myself. Ethan had always been clear: our home, his investments, and the business we built together would go to me. We didn't have children, and he'd made it clear that his mother, despite her entitled attitude, wouldn't see a dime. But as Mr. Reynolds began reading, my world tilted. Asterisk, I, Ethan Whitmore, being of sound mind and body, hereby leave my entire estate, property, assets, and financial holdings to Sylvia Whitmore, my mother. Asterisk. The room spun. I blinked, convinced I'd misheard. The air grew thick, and Sylvia's smirk widened into a triumphant grin. What? I whispered, my throat tightening. That can't be right. Mr. Reynolds frowned and adjusted his glasses. The will was updated 3 months ago. It's legally binding. 3 months ago? That was when Ethan and I had taken a short break after a heated argument about his mother's constant interference. We reconciled quickly, but he never mentioned changing the will. He wouldn't have done that. Not willingly. Sylvia leaned forward, her voice sickeningly sweet. Oh, darling. Ethan must have finally realized blood is thicker than marriage vows. I stood, heart pounding in my ears. This doesn't make sense. Ethan promised. The lawyer raised a hand. I'm sorry, Mrs. Whitmore. Everything now belongs to Sylvia Whitmore, effective immediately. Sylvia's smirk turned into a full-blown smile. Everything, dear. The house, the business, the savings. Pack your things, you're trespassing now. I staggered back, ball rising in my throat. Something was horribly wrong. Ethan wouldn't betray me like this, unless someone else had made sure he did. And judging by Sylvia's victorious look, she already knew exactly what had happened. The walls of the law office seemed to close in around me. Mr. Reynolds continued speaking, but his words blurred into white noise. All I could focus on was Sylvia's satisfied expression. She didn't even try to hide her glee. It was as if she'd been waiting for this moment, savoring every second of my devastation. Is there anything else? She asked, her tones syrupy sweet. I have movers ready to clear out my house. My house. Our house. The one Ethan and I had bought together, renovated together, and dreamed of filling with children one day. I clenched my fists so tightly that my nails dug into my palms. This has to be a mistake, I muttered, turning to Mr. Reynolds. Ethan and I discussed this. He would have never done this willingly. There has to be another will. An older one. Something. Mr. Reynolds sighed, clearly uncomfortable. I understand your frustration, Mrs. Whitmore. But this will was notarized, witnessed, and filed properly. It's legally sound. Sylvia stood, smoothing down her designer dress. Legally sound, she echoed, beaming. Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. You've been most helpful. She turned to me, her eyes gleaming with malice. You have 72 hours to vacate the property. I've already notified the bank to freeze any joint accounts. Of course, my accounts are quite healthy now. Thanks to Ethan's foresight. I wanted to scream, to lash out, to wipe that smug grin off her face. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't change anything. Not here. Not without proof that something sinister was at play. I stormed out of the office, tears burning in my eyes. The cool breeze outside hit my face like a slap, grounding me. I needed to think. Ethan had been smart, meticulous even, when it came to finances and legal matters. There was no way he'd hand everything over to his mother, not after years of strained conversations and boundaries he'd fought to set. Back at the house, her house now, I moved on autopilot, throwing essentials into a suitcase. My phone buzzed. It was Mia, my best friend. Liv, what happened? You left the will reading without saying a word. I swallowed hard. Sylvia got everything. The house, the business, the accounts. Ethan changed the will 3 months ago. There was a pause, then Mia hissed, "Bullshit." Ethan hated his mother. He wouldn't trust her with a goldfish, let alone his life's work. Exactly, I said, pacing the bedroom. Something's off. I need to find out what happened. There has to be a paper trail, emails, something. Ethan never made major decisions without discussing them with me. Mia's voice sharpened. Start with his office. Check his emails, the safe, anything he kept private. If Sylvia's behind this, she would have left a trail. Arrogant people always do. I glanced at the oak desk in the corner of the room. Ethan's home office had always been his sanctuary, meticulously organized, everything in its place. But the day after his death, Sylvia had insisted on helping me sort through his things. She'd spent hours in there alone, claiming she was preserving her son's memory. Now, the room felt cold and unfamiliar, like it had been scrubbed clean of Ethan's presence. I sat at his desk, powering up his laptop. Password protected, of course, but I knew Ethan well enough to guess. His first car's model, Civic 2007 unlocked the home screen. My chest tightened. This was real. He was really gone, and I was fighting for scraps of the life we'd built together. I dug through emails first, searching keywords like will, estate, and Sylvia. Nothing unusual. Just standard work exchanges and a few emails about the short break we'd taken months ago. Then I checked the cloud storage. There, buried in a folder labeled Personal Docs, was a PDF titled Last Will _Final 2024. My heart pounded as I opened it. It was exactly what I remembered. Everything left to me, with a small charitable donation and a trust fund for future children. Dated 6 months ago. Before the alleged update. Why would Ethan keep this version if he'd truly changed the will? I downloaded the file to my phone, took screenshots just in case, and kept digging. In his sent folder, I found an email Ethan had forwarded to himself, originally from a private legal consultant I didn't recognize. The subject line chilled me. Draft update. New will per your mother's request. The email was dated 2 months before his death. Attached was a draft matching the version Mr. Reynolds had read. But the wording in the body stood out. As requested by Ms. Sylvia Whitmore, here is the revised draft for your review. If this looks correct, we can proceed with signing next week. Requested by Sylvia? Ethan had never handled legal matters through anyone but our family lawyer. Why would he switch, and why would his mother be involved? I leaned back in the chair, mind racing. Ethan hadn't changed his will willingly. Either he'd been manipulated, coerced, or... My breath caught. Forged. I scrolled further down, heart pounding, until I found the digital signature confirmation for the final will. Ethan's signature was there, but something was off. The slant, the spacing. Ethan always signed his name, with a distinct flourish at the end. This one was too clean, almost mechanical. I forwarded everything to Mia. I think Sylvia forged the will. I need to prove it. Her reply was immediate. Meet me at my office first thing tomorrow. I know someone who can analyze the signature. I exhaled slowly, determination hardening my resolve. Sylvia thought she'd won, but she underestimated me. I wasn't just going to fight back. I was going to bury her with the truth. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, Sylvia's smirk haunted me. The image of Ethan's signature, off, mechanical, wrong, flashed through my mind like a warning siren. I didn't just need to suspect fraud. I needed concrete proof. Proof that could stand up in court and rip Sylvia's smug victory from her perfectly manicured hands. At dawn, I threw on jeans and a sweater, grabbed Ethan's laptop and my phone, and headed straight to Mia's office. She worked as a paralegal at a small but reputable law firm, and if anyone could point me in the right direction, it was her. Mia was already waiting, coffee in hand, and her expression sharp. "You look like hell," she said bluntly, pushing the cup toward me. "Feel worse," I muttered, taking a sip. "Please tell me you found something." "I did better than that," she said, leading me into a private conference room. A man in his early 40s sat there, typing away on a sleek tablet. "This is Jeremy. He's a forensic document examiner. I told him everything last night, and he agreed to take a look." Jeremy glanced up, offering a polite nod. "Send me the PDF with the signature, along with any old documents Ethan signed, contracts, mortgage papers, even birthday cards. The more samples, the better." I pulled out a folder I'd thrown together overnight. Ethan had always been the kind of man who left a paper trail, meticulous, organized, predictable. It was one of the things I'd loved about him. Jeremy examined the documents in silence, occasionally making notes. After what felt like an eternity, he leaned back with a grim expression. "It's a forgery," he said, tapping the screen. "See here?" He zoomed in on the signature from the new will. The pen pressure is inconsistent, and the strokes lack the natural variation of a live signature. This was created using an auto pen or a digital signature tool. It's sophisticated, but not perfect. My heart pounded. "So, you can prove Ethan didn't sign it himself?" He nodded. "With 90% certainty, yes. It would hold up in court." Mia grinned. "That's enough to challenge the will. We can file a motion to contest, citing forgery and undue influence." My relief was short-lived. Sylvia was powerful, connected, and ruthless. She wouldn't roll over without a fight. "We need more," I murmured, pacing the room. If Sylvia orchestrated this, she didn't do it alone. Mr. Reynolds seemed genuinely surprised by the will's contents. Someone else was involved, someone who handled the paperwork. Jeremy frowned. "The notary. Every will needs to be notarized. If the signature's forged, the notary either didn't witness it properly or was complicit." Mia's eyes lit up. "That's it. We find the notary. We find the weak link." A quick search through Ethan's emails revealed the name, Darlene Cummings, Mobile Notary Public. I called her immediately. She answered on the second ring. "Hello." "Hi, Miss Cummings," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm Olivia Whitmore, Ethan Whitmore's wife. You notarized an updated will for him a few months ago. I have some questions about the process." There was a long pause. When she spoke again, her tone was guarded. "I'm sorry, but I can't discuss client matters without legal authorization." I expected that. "Of course. I'll have my lawyer reach out. I just wanted to clarify one thing. Were you present when Ethan signed the will?" Silence. "Miss Cummings, I can't confirm that," she said hurriedly. "I have to go." The line went dead. I stared at the phone, dread settling like a stone in my stomach. "She's hiding something," Mia said, jaw tight. "We need to confront her in person." Within an hour, we were parked outside a modest townhouse across town. Darlene's car was in the driveway, but the curtains were drawn. "Stay here," Mia said, already halfway out the door. I followed anyway. Darlene opened the door after the third knock, looking pale and frazzled. "Please," I said, holding up my hands. "I'm not here to accuse you. I just need the truth. Did you witness Ethan signing that will?" Her eyes darted around like she was searching for an escape. "I know," she finally admitted, voice trembling. "Sylvia contacted me. Said it was urgent, that Ethan was too busy to meet in person but had approved everything. She sent over the documents with an already signed signature. I was told to notarize them and return the papers." My breath caught. "You never saw Ethan sign it?" Darlene shook her head. "No." I should have insisted, but Sylvia offered extra for the inconvenience. "I didn't think. That's fraud." Mia cut in sharply. "You realize you could lose your license, face criminal charges?" Tears welled in Darlene's eyes. I didn't know it was fake. I thought Ethan had signed it privately. If I'd known. I took a deep breath. We don't want to ruin your life. But you need to make this right. Will you testify? Swear an affidavit. Darlene hesitated, then nodded, defeated.
Yes.
I'll do whatever it takes. Mia's phone buzzed. She glanced down, then smiled grimly. Jeremy just sent over his official report. Between the forgery analysis, the notary's admission, and the original will, we've got enough to blow Sylvia's scheme wide open. My chest loosened for the first time in days. Sylvia had played her game well, but I was about to end it. 2 days later, I stood outside the courthouse, clutching a folder thick with evidence. My heart pounded as I watched Sylvia step out of a sleek black sedan, her face the picture of arrogant confidence. Dressed in designer clothes and dripping with jewelry. My asterisk jewelry, if we were being honest. She glanced my way and smirked. Brave of you to show up, Olivia, she drawled, adjusting her sunglasses. I assumed you'd crawl away quietly after realizing how little Ethan truly thought of you. I smiled, cool and steady. Oh, I wouldn't miss this for the world, Sylvia. Watching you squirm is going to be delightful. Her smirk faltered for half a second, just long enough for me to know she was rattled. Inside the courtroom, Mr. Reynolds sat with Sylvia's legal team, looking far less composed than he had at the will reading. I'd sent him copies of the evidence the night before, Jeremy's forgery report, Darlene's signed affidavit, and the original will Ethan had saved on his cloud account. The judge, a stern-looking woman with sharp eyes, called the session to order. Mrs. Whitmore, she began, you're contesting the validity of your late husband's will. On what grounds? I stood, nerves buzzing under my skin. Fraud, Your Honor. The will presented by Sylvia Whitmore was forged. My husband never signed it. A murmur rippled through the room. Sylvia's lawyer, a smug man in an expensive suit, stood up. Objection. That's a serious accusation with no credible evidence. I smiled and held up the folder. I beg to differ. I have a forensic analysis proving the signature was digitally generated, not hand-signed. I also have a sworn affidavit from the notary, Ms. Darlene Cummings, stating she never witnessed Ethan sign the will, despite the legal requirement to do so. The judge gestured for the bailiff to collect the documents. As she flipped through the pages, her expression hardened. Sylvia Whitmore, the judge said, gaze sharp. Do you have any explanation for why the notary never witnessed the signing? Sylvia's lawyer leaned in, whispering furiously in her ear. She waved him off, standing with forced poise. My son trusted me implicitly, Your Honor. He signed the will privately and asked me to handle the logistics. Clearly, this is a desperate attempt by his widow to cling to assets that no longer belong to her.
I didn't even need to speak.
The judge raised a hand to silence her. Mrs. Whitmore, the forensic evidence is damning, and the notary's confession corroborates the claim of forgery. Unless you have substantial counter-evidence, I'm inclined to invalidate the contested will and reinstate the previous, legally sound version. Sylvia's face drained of color. Her lawyer stood again, his confidence shaken. Your Honor, my client was unaware of any forgery. If fraud occurred, it must have been the work of an overzealous third party. Mrs. Whitmore shouldn't be penalized for someone else's crime. I couldn't help but laugh. Really? Because I have bank records showing Sylvia paid Ms. Cummings an additional $10,000 2 days after the will was notarized. Care to explain that charitable donation? The judge's gavel came down sharply. That's enough. Given the overwhelming evidence of fraud and undue influence, the court hereby invalidates the contested will and reinstates the original version dated 6 months prior to Mr. Ethan Whitmore's passing. Furthermore, I am ordering a full investigation into possible criminal conduct regarding the forgery. Sylvia's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Mr. Reynolds, to his credit, had the sense to pack his briefcase quietly and inch away from her. I stood tall as the judge finalized the ruling. Outside the courthouse, Mia threw her arms around me. You did it, Liv. You took her down. Sylvia stormed past us, heels clicking furiously on the pavement. This isn't over, she hissed. I'll fight this.
I'll.
No, Sylvia, I interrupted, voice calm and sure. It is over. You lost. And now, the authorities will want a word with you about that forgery. Her face twisted with rage as she stumbled toward her car, the picture of a woman who had gambled everything and lost. Later that evening, I stood in my house, the one Sylvia had tried to steal, sipping wine on the back patio Ethan and I had built together. The grief was still there, sharp and hollow, but it no longer felt poisoned by betrayal. Mia joined me, raising her glass. To justice, she said, grinning. I clinked my glass against hers, feeling the weight of the past few weeks lift. To Ethan, I whispered, looking up at the night sky. And to never letting anyone steal what's rightfully ours. Sylvia had tried to rewrite my future, but I'd reclaimed it, asterisk on my term star.